spent with SQL Server in various different roles. I founded Server Central, as Mala mentioned. And my goal there was just to help you be better. So my partners and I, when we started that site, we had had some success over time. And our goal was to just help others kind of achieve success. And that's a lot of what I continue to do at Redgate. Even though I do try to sell software, I still try to continue to help people. And Redgate really supports that. So I'm grateful. And Microsoft, of course, have honored me with the MVP as well. And I'm quite pleased with that. And I'm proud that they do so. My contact information is here, and I'll have it at the end as well if you want to get a hold of me. So I want to rewind for a year. Right? So everybody, it's either May something or it's March 400th, 2020. But in February of last year, I actually went to Las Vegas. This is my wife and I. It was our last airplane trip of 2020, which was not expected. In most years, I travel 15 to 20 times a year for business and for personal trips, and I go all over the world. And we were laughing about this Corona thing. We were like, Vegas is never going to shut down. And it was very normal in Vegas, right? There's no masks and crowds and all the things that we did 2 years ago. And we knew that the pandemic would be a little bit of a problem, but I thought it would be like SARS or N1H1 in Mars or some of these other ones where it's tragic and it's horrific for some people, but the majority of the world kind of goes on and it dies out pretty quickly. Little did we expect. So let's go forward a month. So a month later, March 1st, I'm actually coaching these girls in a tournament here in Denver. Grant Fritchie, who I work with, and Glenn Berry, who's in Dr. DMV in the SQL community, who lives just a couple miles over here. They were in Germany for the SQL conference. And I was sad that I missed them. I was hoping I would overlap with Grant slightly in the UK. And I was supposed to travel a week later to go to London with my wife. And she was getting really nervous. And we're playing, we're having fun. These girls are having a great time. Their parents are there. But my wife is saying, hey, I think we should cancel. She goes, I think it's going to be worse. At this time, my friend and the owner of Redgate, Simon Galbraith, actually said right before this that he thought the pandemic would be worse than we expected. Excuse me. And he started to send groups home from Redgate. So groups of developers, groups in different areas would go home for a day and run their stand-ups and their meetings and do their work and get used to working at home. Okay. And at this point, the UK was still open. Italy was really struggling. It was horrific for friends in Italy, but we really hadn't closed much at this point in time. So I was still enjoying life. A week later, at a tournament, this is the Denver Convention Center. You can't really see it, but you can see the distance. There's 112 courts in this space. We're all together. We are cleaning things. We stopped shaking hands, so the girls did not get to shake hands with their opponents anymore. And we started to do the elbow bump thing. But we canceled some things, right? Like we limited some of the people and things. My daughter came home for spring break to be here. We were thinking, all right, we're going to be slightly restricted here, but we're going to be fine. And I had canceled my trip. I was literally supposed to leave this court and go to the airport and fly away. A couple of days later, everything shut down in Denver. Now, I don't know what date it was for you, but about 11 p.m. on March 11th, really March 12th for me, Denver posted a note that they were canceling the second week of the volleyball tournament. There were no gatherings allowed. We were closing down bars and restaurants and everything else. My daughter got told not to come back to school. So all of her stuff was in New York, all of her, winter clothes and everything other than her laptop and what she had put in a bag to come back home for a week was all gone. It was crazy. This is actually a picture in Walmart. So if you're in the US, we have these huge Walmart stores, but they're almost like warehouses for groceries. This was the aisle that's normally filled with rice. And just to the right of this would be beans. And there was nothing there. No flour, no yeast. I couldn't make bread. It was an absolutely amazing thing. Now, I have seen very limited supplies in Denver. We have really bad weather in the winter, blizzards and things, but I'd never seen it like this. And people were starting to get scared pretty quickly. This was a worldwide event and the world just shut down. And I still, to this day, kind of can't believe that it happened. How many businesses went online especially like Redgate. Like we just closed everything and everybody went home and they started to work on home. Businesses, buildings were locked down. I'm sure many of you experienced this. And we started to have a big change for all of us where we had to figure out how to cope with a very different world than we'd grown up in. Grant, Kathy, Kendra, and myself, we travel a lot for Redgate, and we are used to working at home, but it was very strange for us as well. My wife actually shut down her horse business. So she teaches people out here, and we have people that store horses here that board them and come. And she shut down for a month because we were scared. We were really worried that somebody would get sick here and they might die. And that wasn't something we wanted to deal with. So we closed out of fear. Now, Redgate didn't. We had a few weeks that were strange, but we had a meeting last March, right near the beginning of March. And our boss, my boss, Kathy's boss, they said that the owner of the company had said, Redgate's fine. We have enough money to survive the year if we don't sell software. So nobody worry about their jobs. And he said, we really need to remember we're more than Redgate. We're part of the community now, and we have to give back. And he challenged all of us to find ways to give back to others that were less fortunate than we were. And so all these different groups met and spent a few weeks brainstorming, and we did different things. So we gave away a number of free courses. Kathy and Kendra and Grant have sold their courses. They've done pre-cons and things, but they gave those away for free online. And I ran through some of the stairways in SQL Server Central. Our developers started this coding club, which actually was amazing. It was written up in the UK because so many kids enjoyed it, and it gave them something to do while they're at home. And they're actually talking about restarting this. So if you have children or grandchildren or something else, look for this on Twitter. There's links to it that's actually restarted. We built a cookbook. So friends of Redgate and myself and some others, we contributed some recipes. We actually have somebody in Redgate that's published cookbooks as a lead developer. So he helped us. And Grant started his Good Morning Tips, where every morning on Twitter, Grant puts out a very positive message. And he's been doing that for a year now. And I started these coping tips. And that's kind of where this came from. So somebody pointed me to this action for happiness, to find a way to just change your head slightly for a minute or two every day and think about something and maybe affect your behavior. And so I went there and I started looking at their tips and I added them to my newsletter. But more than just publishing them, I decided to work with them every day. So on my blog, I would write about what this tip meant for me, like how it changed my mind, or what did I actually do in life to help me cope. And so I've been doing this for over a year, and it's been an interesting year, and it's really helped myself. And, there's some things I found, right, that having this tip, something to just move forward and be positive about, helped me focus on life a little bit outside of all the difficult things that were going on. And it caused me to experiment. And then writing about it was cathartic. It really did help me feel better some days, because I'll admit, like Paul, I've had some really bad days across this time. And it wasn't always easy, but this was one of those things that helped me just focus away from all the difficulties and challenges and sadness. And I won't say depression, because I don't really have depression, but certainly have had really difficult days where I struggle. And so I put together things that help me and help others, things that people reached out to me about, things that help me get through bad stretches. I don't know if I went a whole week feeling bad without a good day sitting there somewhere, but I definitely got close. As a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago was a really tough week for me. But here are some things that I think have helped. So the world changed in the last year. If you think about it, I think almost every country in the world is different in some way because of this pandemic. And one of the tips that I put out there was that time heals things, and things pass in our heads across time. All of us have probably had incredibly joyous times, incredibly difficult times in our life. We've been sick, we've been sad, we broke up in a relationship, somebody close to us struggled. And those things, it feels like the world is ending when it happens. And when it's to you, you don't want to do anything. And some people have suicidal thoughts. Some people, just can't move or can't get anything accomplished. Or you're struggling with others. Many of us have empathy. I have kids. my kids go through breakups in relationships, or they fail a test, or my son actually was in a car accident recently. And uh, I feel bad that I can't make him realize it's not that big a deal to have a car accident. It's, everything can be fixed. You're fine. The other people are healthy, but you have to keep chugging forward because things do heal in time. It really is a great healer. And no matter what has happened, including a good friend of mine passing away a few months ago from COVID, it will go on. And so trying to just remember that is also useful. Another thing I think has been both good and bad in the world in the last few decades is we have a lot of negativity online. The media has always had some of that, but certainly the social media has made it worse. And those negative things, they affect you, whether you want to think it or not. Right? So often what I found is that if I avoid looking at headlines or beyond headlines, it's helpful to me. I think one of the amazing things last year that I was surprised how excited I was, in the US, John Krasinski was the actor in The Office, and he started this Some Good News Network, which was just a YouTube show. He put together a half-hour show looking for good news. His kids and his wife, they helped him do this, and it became quite popular. And actually, I think they're rebooting it now on a real network as opposed to YouTube. But go back and look at some of those. I look forward to that every week. And even though it was 7 or 8 weeks of what he did, it was incredibly helpful. I mean, I found myself laughing and crying, staring at my computer in these stories that he put out there. And I think finding the joy in the world has been really helpful for me. Mala and I are Facebook friends. Kathy and I are Facebook friends. And really, I use Facebook for friendship. I keep in touch with people that I know that I can't see or that I typically won't see. So a few friends from my youth, from high school, some friends from college, and people I've known. And I love seeing the pictures, Mala's walks in the parks and Kathy's grandkids and my other friends and their kids as good things happen to them. And anybody that tends to post just text, I tend to just go past it and ignore it because I'm looking for fun things. I want to see what things animals have done or what things people have achieved. I've seen kids graduate school or get an award of some sort. And just seeing that positivity sometimes is a good break from things that are getting me down. And then I do try to get off the tech more. The first time I saw this tip, have a tech-free day, I was like, my world is tech, right? It's my job. It's been my career. And, I carry this silly thing around all the time. And I read on it. I read on it constantly. I probably have, 500 books in the Kindle on here that I've bought over the last decade. But I have started to just try to get away from some of it. And then those of you that know me probably realize like I'm doing a lot less on Facebook and Twitter and anywhere else because I'm just trying to get away from this screen thing more often. I'm trying to turn off news. I'm trying to turn off this digital world for me and just enjoy the real world more. And you'll see many of the tips I think of the rest of the presentation talk about the real world a little bit more. And so while I do keep my phone close, especially on weekends for reading or games, I love like 1-minute games that I can just distract me for a minute. I keep a lot of the other stuff closed and I try not to check email, try not to post. This computer, while it runs, typically when I'm off of work, I don't use it. So I may look up something on YouTube because I break stuff and fix stuff here at the ranch all the time, but I try not to do anything related to tech. And sometimes I find myself very much out of touch because I'm ignoring news and I'm ignoring things that are happening. And then the last one here that I thought about the world changes is that find some reason to think about the future and to imagine what could happen, because this is going to pass. We are getting things under control. We are getting vaccinated. We as humans, as a species, as governments, as societies, and as cultures, we're incredibly resilient. Just the fact that we shut down, I mean, for those of you out there, we stopped flying airplanes and we closed borders to a large extent, which is stunning that we did that. So I'm hopeful that we are going to find things in the future that we can go do again, and we will get back to some version of normal. And I'll get to go places like this. This is Turtle Beach in New Zealand that I was there 2 years ago. And I thought I'd have been back by now. It was one of my favorite trips. My family was there, and it was one of our favorite trips for all of us. But I know I'll get back. I know that things will improve and get going. And so, despite all the changes in the world, being hopeful and having some faith and belief in something else, whether that's a spiritual thing or a physical thing or a mental thing, it's going to get better. And for a lot of us, sometimes we don't feel hopeful, but just seeing that in print and stopping to write about it made me think, and it made me find something hopeful for the future. And it helped me just get past the bad feelings that I was having that time. All right. Stress is always there. I think those, especially those of us technology, those of us certainly have worked in operations areas, we're stressed out. I think developers and those of us, we're certainly just get stressed when we have deadlines. And there's no shortage of us having worked very long hours or pressured to work long hours in our careers. And this pandemic is incredibly stressful. I think whether you are very concerned about things and very empathetic and very maybe progressive or liberal is the word that you think this is horrible and we need to do more, or you're very conservative and you think we're doing too much and we shouldn't be wearing masks, or we should be opening up, or we should be flying. Either way, that's a stressful time for you. It's been very stressful. And so some of the things I've found in my life that distractions are very helpful for coping with this stress, especially distractions that help your body. So motion is a big deal. Some of you know I used to run all the time, and now I'm too old, as Mala said, to do this, but I do continue to do some other things. And so for me, yoga is a big deal. I do yoga all the time, but Tai Chi, meditation, quiet walks, I've tried all of these. They all are good for helping cope with things. I have family members that deal with depression. And so sometimes just getting them to move a little bit, it doesn't remove it, but it lessens it, or it dampens down some of those feelings. So motion, and these are all different tips we've had over the last year for motion, is useful. And you can't always do all of them. I know some people are locked down and going for a walk somewhere is difficult. Some of you don't have cars, but you want to do what you can, and so for me, sometimes I've just gone for a drive for an hour. I'll drive 10 miles away to get a cup of coffee, and then 15 miles back in a circle just to get away, or walk around. I'm blessed that I have all this space I can walk around, but that's been very helpful. Music is a big part of my life, and singing, even though I cannot sing at all. None of you want me to sing. That's been fun. Like, it's put a smile on my face when I can put some song on here in my office by myself. And I just spend a few minutes enjoying music. This last one I think is really interesting. It's box breathing. And my wife told me about it. I think she got it from the US Navy SEALs or the Special Forces or something. They use this technique to lower their heart rate in very stressful situations. And so while the pandemic is stressful, having people shoot guns at you is very, very stressful. And so they use this technique to deal with that. And it really works. And I've used it quite often. And we've actually had it work with the kids at times when they've been really stressed and almost panicking or crying. It's like, just breathe. Right. So we breathe in for a count of 3. 1, 2, 3. We hold, we exhale, and then we pause with no air. And you'd be surprised. This is the kind of thing that will lower your heart rate and lower your stress level. Just doing this for a couple of minutes. Just breathe, focus on counting, and it's kind of amazing. Now, I live out here on a ranch in Colorado. I've got 35 acres here, so it's a mile if you walk around my property. And we have horses, we have dogs, we have cats. We have all sorts of nature out here. And it's incredibly healing and joyous for us to be able to be outside, right? At night, we can see stars. During the day, it's quiet and there's animals walking around, or the wind blows or something else. And I think nature is one of those items that we sometimes forget about in the modern world. These kids I coach, or people I encounter that spend all their lives inside concrete, and they don't often think about how it's different. Now, some of us do, right? Some of us have plants in our houses, or we go for walks. We seek out nature, but just looking up at the sky and realizing how big and amazing it is, or seeing plants or animals around you and appreciating there's more beyond this rat race of us trying to move bits around and get a project done or something deployed or whatever we're doing is really helpful. And these types of tips that I've had are good for me because I get away from this desk and I go spend a couple minutes outside somewhere else. There's even times now where I'll just go sit on the front porch, I don't go anywhere. I take a cup of coffee and stare at the world and just think about things that are bigger in the world than I am. And it's something that I think has helped me often when I travel, that I go to places like London, which are very much a city, but there are parks there. And I'll take a few minutes and walk through a park rather than walking down the block and over. I'll just cut through the park and spend a minute inside the trees. And I'm not I couldn't tell you what the names of any trees or anything else, but just being around plants or animals and appreciating that they just live the life simply rather than being rushed or stressed or something else has been helpful for me. It helps me just get away from everything that's really difficult for me. And then health is a big deal. I mean, we in America suck at this. Like we have horrific diets and health overall, but it's bad everywhere. I think the modern world makes this difficult. And so in the last year, I've really tried hard to be better at how I take care of myself, especially as I'm getting old. It is hard. Things hurt, and recovering from issues is difficult. And certainly with stress, it affects your body. And I notice it more and more every year. I'm over 50 now, and it's difficult. So some of the tips I've had throughout the year are a lot of times with cooking or taking care of your body in different ways. And so being more healthy, trying to be more natural, more homemade, I think has been good. And that was one of those big things in the pandemic that changed my life, because my kids came home, at least, well, two of them did. And we were all together for family dinners again. And so they all appreciated me cooking because I'm the one that cooks in the house. But I looked to find more healthy food all the time. And so here's the kind of a picture of a meal where I made shrimp and fish, and then I had some meat, and then I had lots of vegetables. And really, some of the shortages didn't affect me other than yeast. Yeast was kind of a pain, but because I would buy fresh fruits and vegetables a lot and cook those up, and we limited the amount of meat we did because there were certainly meat shortages. It was good for me to just do things from scratch. So I've done things this year, like I made a cake from scratch that I'd never done, so no mix anything, right? Like I bought all the individual ingredients and made a cake from scratch. Not super healthy, but very joyous. So I tried lots of different things as well. Like I've seen recipe channels. We have one at work, and I've seen other places, and so I've tried to do different things that are both healthy, but they're exciting. They're fun to do them. And so even for my wife, who doesn't like to cook, she typically cooks 2 days a year, Christmas and Thanksgiving. She did cook a few times, or she started to request recipes. Like, could we do this type of thing? We did try to support a few restaurants. And so we tried some different restaurants that we don't normally go to, but we supported them and tried different meals along the way. And it was really a joyous time to remember family and get back together around a meal and around food. And the other thing is I drank a lot of water. So I've always tried to be fairly healthy, and I do try to drink water. As a matter of fact, I have 4 of these water bottles. This one's from the past summit 2019, the very last one. I would fill these up every day and sit them on my desk. And my boss actually laughed because early last year, we all did a little video of what our day was like. And so my day started with filling up these 4 water bottles, sticking them on my desk, and making sure I drink them. Now, Denver's a high desert, so we need to drink water. It matters. But it was good for me to remember to drink more water because everything else in my life shrank and went down, became more closed in with this pandemic. And so drinking water was very, very helpful for me to keep my body moving. So there's lots of other tips throughout the year. They're all on my blog if you want to look, but certainly I found that movement and health were big ones that resonated with other people as well. So change I mentioned, right, I have lots of friends that are fairly conservative that just been angry for a year. And I have lots of friends that are fairly not conservative liberal that have been scared for a year. But for all of us, it's been this big change, right? That the world as we know it has been very different. And everything in our routine ended up changing. I don't know anybody that had things go normal. Even people that still had to go to work, that still went to offices, or that had to go to a job. We had masks and we had less traffic, or we had less people around. It was just a very strange time. So these are my girls. They won a tournament last year, but this is the kind of thing that we had to do differently, because you can see here, this was late last year. We won this tournament. We all had masks on. These girls had to play with masks. And no matter what, even though they could still go out there and play the game, it was a big change. We didn't have parents around. We didn't have spectators. We had to deal with a different kind of world in which we're living and still get things done. So some of the things I think that were important is that routine is important to most of us, right? Even the spontaneous ones, we like to know how certain things will go. And so we lost a lot of that in the past year, especially for those of us in tech, because the way that we had oversight, the different kinds of oversight we got, or the way that we interacted with people, or the way that we got work done, it just changed. Most of us aren't used to working completely remote. Even though I am here most of the time, I'm rarely here in the past more than 3 or 4 weeks before I'm traveling somewhere else. And so when you do, it's a loss when you don't get to do the things that you want to do. So some of the things that I found helpful in trying to deal with these losses, we're thinking back about the past or the future and trying to go, there are still good things out there, or good things have happened to me. So memories, especially photos for me, these were the tips that I love doing, mostly because I stopped and spent time flipping through photos from the past and then remembering the times that I was with Kathy. Like one of the photos I got was Kathy, Grant, and I in Oslo, all together, all wearing, well, not the same shirt, but 2 of the 3 of us had the same shirt. Having this happy memory of this times we've been together. And so being able to share that with others, or do it privately with people that in my family or friendship that I had spent that time with, it was really useful to me. Like it was a nice break from this somewhat depressing world that got me down. And then I did make some plans, and I wrote down some things that I was looking forward to. That I think at the time I did this one, I was thinking, it's 6 or 9 months more, and of course it's 9 months more now, and we're still here. But I'm still hopeful. Like my wife and I talk about it more, and we are thinking about and dreaming about the future, and we're looking forward. And just before we talked here, we're talking about trying to get together, Grant, Kathy, and myself, sometime this year from work with a couple other people, and just try to remember that even though the world has changed, we still have things that are important to us that we can find and we can hold on to, and they give us hope. So those are important. And I learned to deal with anger a little bit, right? Or frustration, and probably a little bit of both. Early on last year, and it's probably April, the UK shut down, right? And all kids came home. And so we had everybody working at home. People were trying to figure out how to essentially run their work plus run a school in their household. Some people didn't have kids and had to deal with being alone, or had to share a Wi-Fi with multiple people, right? Share an internet connection. And that was the thing here, right? 3 of us were trying to get work done every day, or school done. And it can be very difficult. Certainly most of my friends have computers, but they didn't have a computer for every person in the household. My boss, or our owner, said, we have to be reasonable to each other. And that was something that stuck with me for over a year. And I still say that to people now, that you have to be reasonable, that what you're going through and what you're dealing with is not what other people are dealing with. And whether you're frustrated or they're frustrated and we're not getting things done, we have to have some allowance for that. And we have to give everybody a little bit of a break and a little more understanding and empathy for what they're going through. And so I've come across tips across the last year that always make me think about that I've got to give myself a break. I've got to give somebody else a break because they didn't get something done, or they want me to get something done and they're frustrated, or I'm frustrated because I can't go do something. I have to stop and just take a step back and relax. And so this is one of those, this first one, notice when you're hard on others and be kind instead, is one of those things that I've heard different times in my career through the years. And I've blown it off a little bit. I've been like, yeah. Like I do try to be nice, but you still have to get something done. But in this past year, I've started to really stop back and go, okay, let me put myself in their shoes. Let me imagine for a second that I've got, young children, 4-year-olds that are trying to do schoolwork, or that I want them to do schoolwork. And I'm still trying to work and I'm ignoring them and they don't know what to do. And so how would I feel if somebody's asking me for work, or I'm trying to get something done and they haven't done what I expect from them? Or how would I feel if I lived in London or New York and I couldn't go anywhere? Like I had to have things delivered and I had to count on the grocer picking out the fruit or vegetables I wanted, or the meat. And so I've learned a lot of times to take a deep breath, or to count and just give them and myself a break and have more understanding for their situation. And sometimes when we're frustrated, just taking a minute and stopping and having some empathy for another's point of view is very, very helpful. I know for sure that that's one of those things that has made me slow down a little bit, but still try to maybe reach out and help more for others. So maybe sometimes I take on more work rather than ask somebody to do something, because I realize I need to be more reasonable. And so if I have more capacity, I have more ability, I should take advantage of that and help somebody else out. And if they have more capacity, I should accept and understand that. And that's been a big deal, because I've been a very independent person. I tend not to ask people for help. You can ask Kathy, like I have asked her for help a couple times this year, and it's a very rare thing for me to do. But just remembering to be reasonable and be kind to myself and others has been huge in this last year. And really, if you did nothing else out of here, that's a big one for the world. I also try to give comments. Like I do try to remember that I deal with a lot of service people in hotels and airports and convention centers, everything else. And many of those people still had to work this year, or they lost their jobs. And so as I've seen more people around, that, especially those that I think might not have been as blessed as I was, or as lucky as I was in life, I try to give those comments, and I try to understand and be extra polite and helpful to them, because it's important. A little comment like that will sometimes make a big difference in somebody's day. It resets their mind, it resets their attitude, as opposed to them just going through life quickly or dealing with stress. So that's been a huge issue for me as well, is to just remember there are people struggling way worse than I am. I mean, my life is perfect. I have no reason to complain about anything. And I feel bad when I feel down or sad, because I have financial security, everybody's healthy, and I have, this huge property to be around and stuff. So I try to really remember that, and remember, for almost all of us, right, we should have more humility, and we should be kind to others and tell them when they do something good. That's a big deal. I'm a routine guy for years. My middle son is like the same way. We like things to go A, B, C all the time. But this last year has taught me that things don't always go the way I want them. Or something that might have, I take it for granted that would work, it isn't going to work anymore. And that definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting something new, right? And I have friends that have OCD and mental issues, and they have tremendous frustration at times because they can't get their brain to change out of the pattern that it's in. And so often when I've dealt with them, is right, just to gently, let's try something slightly different, because it is frustrating when you're doing something over and over and over again and you can't change. And it's especially frustrating if you mentally can't change. And I don't know how some of these people get through life, and they have all my empathy and sympathy and my best wishes, because I hope that they find ways to cope, just like I've spent time coping with my perfect life here. But sometimes when things don't go well, I just have to try something different rather than the same way. So if stores have shortages of ingredients, I have to try something new when I'm cooking. If I'm expecting to follow a certain path for this marketing thing we're doing at Redgate and it's not working, and or somebody's struggling with health or their fear or something else, I have to try something different. If I'm struggling with the way I'm getting my work done because of the situation here, I have to try something different. Right. And so for some of you, this week, actually, we went from 5 newsletters to 3. I've been doing 3 newsletters for, 18 years or something. Or sorry, I've been doing 5 for most of the time of SQL Server Central. So it was a very difficult decision for me to make, just as a prideful person that's been doing this, but I had to just go, my capacity sometimes is diminished, and I'm struggling some of these weeks to get things done. And so, grateful that my boss said, let's try an experiment and let's let this go. And if nothing else, I think everybody at Redgate has been incredibly supportive of each other. And that alone has helped us not just survive, but we've continued to thrive as a company, because we've sometimes slowed down and remembered we have to take care of each other. And sometimes we just have to do things differently. And then maybe the big one that I put down here, and this is really for my wife, is that you got to remember that some things go well. That, right, we have these stressful times. We think the world is ending, right. My wife and I don't break up, or my kids break up. And I remember when I've had lost relationships in the past, or something didn't go well, like I broke something here on the ranch. You feel like the world is ending. And I don't mean to smile so much, because I know that when this happens for many people, it's tragic. It's just crushing to you, whether it's a big thing or a little thing, right? It can just be crushing to you. But you have to remember that there are good things that happen. And sometimes my wife will say, hey, remember that you did this thing, or you got to do that thing, or this thing went well, you accomplished this. And that's been really helpful to help pull me out of this doldrums, or these sad times, that something did go well, right? Like, I have parents that were upset they couldn't see these kids win this medal, but we said, hey, you got to remember, these kids got to play, right? They had a good time. They had success. Even though they had masks on, even though you couldn't come, there was a good thing in this, even if it wasn't good for you. And a few weeks ago, I think I lost 3 days of work a few weeks ago because I was just mildly depressed, right? Like, I have friends with depression, so I wasn't depressed, and I don't want to make light of it, but I just couldn't concentrate, couldn't get anything done. I felt bad at the world. And so my wife stopped me going, hey, remember this, that went well, right? It's not as bad as you think it is. You're not Eeyore. Don't walk around like Eeyore and just go, oh no, woe is me. Remember, something good happened. And that can help just change your attitude and turn things around. And a lot of times changing that frame of reference can help you. And then this last one I thought was interesting. I put this with the frustration because we are frustrated and they are difficult, but then we want to believe in the future, right? Many of us have these strong spiritual beliefs, or many of us are very type A driven, and we want to be positive, even if we're struggling with other things. And so finding hope is important. And I did this a lot in the last year. Right? Like, I not only made these long lists, but we made short-term lists of, hey, what can we do in the next few weeks that we can make things better? Or what can we try? And so those have been really helpful, right? Even though like I booked 4 flights last year and I canceled 4 flights last year for different reasons, right? Some of them were fear, some of them were, I actually got COVID, I was sick, right? Different things happened, but just making the plans and lists and things were helpful for us to get us going. And then many of you have done this, right? We've seen stories, try something new and different. Okay. So right before the pandemic, I got the last sabbatical at Redgate Software. So I was in sabbatical in February, and Kathy and I were talking about it because she was over in Cambridge and I wasn't there for this big meeting thing. But on my sabbatical, apart from a couple of projects around here, I picked up the guitar and got more serious. So I've been playing since I was high school, but I hadn't, I'm a real hack. I was not that good, but I was more serious for the 8 weeks I was on sabbatical. And then I've continued that through the year. And so there's times where I'll sit and I'll just play and I'll work on it. I also picked up Duolingo, and I'm now over a year getting back into Japanese, which I studied in college, and doing French with my daughter and trying something different. And it's surprising how that little 5 or 10 minutes a day or 15 minutes it brings something more to my life that I didn't realize was there. Is important. And then I use Yet a lot. So with these girls, as you know, I've been coaching for a number of years, and typically I coach 13-year-olds, right, younger girls, and so they can't reach over the net, and they're like, I can't do it. I'm like, you can't yet. I said, you're going to grow, you're going to get stronger, you're going to learn to jump higher. You'll get there, right? So don't think you can't do it. Just think I can't do it yet, right? Now, for me, and Mala probably and Kathy can relate. Sometimes it's I can't anymore because I'm old. Right? So I don't really run anymore. Some things I just don't do anymore because I know that I'll pay a price. But for many of the things we want to do, especially the intellectual things for those of us in this business, remember to say yet. Right? If I'm struggling with it, if I'm having trouble, I can't do it yet, but I'll get there. I'll get there. And then this is a big one for me. So I'm not great at this. Actually, you could argue I'm horrible at this overall. I don't call my mom enough. I have lots of friends. I don't reach out often enough. Really, locally here, there's like 3 people in general before the pandemic that I would call on any sort of regular basis and say, hey, how are you? Want to have a beer or something? But when the pandemic hit, I was really missing people because I'm used to being around hundreds of people at events like this, right? And 2 years ago, Kathy and Mala would have put this together. We would all be in a convention center somewhere, talking to each other, right? I would be able to come off the presentations area and sit with people and chat with them about this, what I've done. So I miss that. I really miss connections. And one of the things I started doing last year, and this tip isn't up there, that I think I published it, is every week I randomly pick 3 people from my contact list and just send a note. Could be email, could be DM on Twitter, could be chat, text. It's send a note. Hey, how are you? Are you getting okay in life? Hopefully you're doing well. I'm doing great. I just did this check-in. And it was kind of amazing that I just touched base with random people. Like I would just pick like A, B, C, D, F. I'm going to pick F. And I would just look through the Fs and pick somebody to touch. And it was really helpful, and I reached out to family and talked with them more. Friends were more emails or chats or texts or something. But I tried these different things to touch people. I did talk to them about memories, or I did tell them why I felt grateful for them in my life, and I wrote about all these things, and they were really helpful. These were some of the best things that I found to give me a good moment in a day. Whether it was an average day, a bad day, or a good day, this was a highlight for doing this thing. And trying to reach out to them was good. And then one of these things it is, so the second one under friends goes along with that be reasonable thing, which was, let's be positive here. And so rather than getting mad or really trying to be helpful, lift somebody up, and so my wife or my daughter has had bad days. Rather than, as a man, sometimes you want to solve their problem, right? I want them to be better. Rather than suggest something, I think listen to them. Go, I know you got it. I'm here. Is there something I can do to help you? Trying to just lift them up rather than be annoyed or angry or looking at my phone when they're talking to me or anything else. Lift people up, right? We want the rising tide to be all of us that helps everybody else that might be struggling through this time or this day or this moment. We want them to be better. Right? And that's why we give out condolences, or that's why we give well wishes and things. So we want to lift people up, whether they're high and we're saying, hey, congratulations, amazing, or they're low and we're saying, we're here for you, got this. It's helpful to remember to always be positive with people when they're struggling, and just say, let's be better. And it's just a good practice in life, right? Let's just be better at what we're doing. one of the fun things here is I did join somebody in their hobby. Somebody did some crafty stuff that I know, and I don't typically like that, but I joined in and tried it on my own and talked to them about it just because I wanted to see the world from their point of view. There's one thing I've learned traveling the world in the last decade is that seeing things from other points of view is very enlightening and it's exciting. And even if I don't like their point of view and I wouldn't want to live that way, it's interesting to see somebody have that joy from that point of view. And so that was very useful. It doesn't have to be family and friends. So I think it's been difficult with community in the last year, but I am remembering that there are others out there in the community, and just smile and be friendly. And even though I don't have a mask here, even though when you're covered, if you smile, you can tell a lot of times from somebody's eyes that they're smiling. And so I smile all the time and, wave and try to be friendly and, hold doors for people, right? Simple things that we used to do in the past make a bigger deal now because you don't know who might be susceptible to this disease or fearful. And little things like holding the door for them or, just being more helpful is good, right? Put their shopping cart away for them, something else. Like many of you have probably cleaned up a little bit and donated things. That's good. Remember, this is a time in the world where we want to give back where we can. So if you're like me, you have a great life or first world problems. You may remember there's lots of people that aren't as blessed or lucky as you are. And so volunteering something, giving something of yourself, donating, it's a good way for us to make the world better at a very difficult time. So that kind of thing is very helpful. And certainly show your appreciation to those grocery workers, gas station workers, cleaning people that are keeping the world going so that we don't have to do some of those things. Very grateful for everybody that does those things. All right, so those are a number of things I think they put out there that people told me or I saw that they commented on or that they had used. The things for me really were touching people. Like that was a big deal to touch people more often. It was neat to catch up with them, but I got to say, I couldn't do more other than have a text conversation or phone conversation or DMs. And that was saddening. And so actually, this is initially very good, but I've cut out a lot of it. Still every week or two, I do reach out to somebody, but it got to be a little depressing for me and it made me sad. And so it became a burden and wore me down. So I do less of this now. And I think for some people it was really good. I do have some people that still are checking on others and people are checking on me, which is kind of amazing. I'm glad, but it wore me down. But I did have some interesting chats. So this is actually a text conversation with my son. He and I practicing Japanese. He's self-taught. He's way smarter than I am, way better at this. But I do all right, And here he's actually telling me about a friend of his had a party, and I was asking him if they drink too much. But this is the kind of thing we do on a regular basis. That I'll just practice some Japanese. I'll send a note, check on him, or ask him what is going on, and he'll send me something back that I then have to start looking up characters because. Again, I'm not as good at this as he is, but it's been a fun thing for he and I to remain connected in this year when he's away at school and different. Music, I said I play guitar. It's been a big deal for me. Just experimenting and trying different things, and even lightly singing. Like my wife will tolerate my incredibly poor singing. By the way, Kathy's an amazing singer. If you get to see her sing, but I am not. But I'll do things like she's out here feeding the horses. They're all getting their grain. You can see them with the bags, but I sit in the chair out there with the guitar and just play as the sun sets and, enjoy nature, enjoy time with my wife, enjoy time with animals and play some music. And it was kind of great. And I had a lot of people send me comments. A lot of other people like music as well. So the comments they sent me were neat to see as well. They brought back these memories of something going on. Like Kathy was on with Bare Naked Ladies or somebody recently on a web stream. So that was pretty cool. And then health is a big deal. So my gym shut down last year for a little while and I started doing yoga in the front yard. I took my mat out there. I built that little box so I can slide my phone in there and it naturally amplifies the sound. My dog was out there. I took a bottle of water, did something different, and I tried different things because, I've loved yoga, but I like a teacher leading me along, so I don't have to think. I can just focus. But here I had to think as well and do different things. Tried different motions. Actually, got rowing last year for a while. I rowed in college, and then have a rowing machine in the basement I haven't used in years. But of all people, Connor Cunningham, the lead architect for SQL Server, started rowing in his house in Texas and posting. And so he encouraged me. I was actually just loved it. And so he got me to row for a couple months last year. It's amazing. And then food, water, and nature just were big parts of my life in the last year, more so than ever before, even though they've lightly been there. So those were big deals for me. And so did it actually work here? I know we're coming up on time shortly, but at Redgate, we have this thing called Thymometrics, and it's a HR software thing or service we subscribe to, where every quarter or so you're supposed to rate these factors. So these factors on the right-hand side here, and Kathy knows about this, but we rate how important these things are to us. So is my salary super important and our personal growth not very important? So we slide these things around and rate them. And then we rate how we feel about it. So we take the same factors and I go, well, my salary is super important. And then I might be super pleased with it or I might not be pleased with it, right? And I kind of rate it. And so I've been doing this for over a decade. And a few years ago, I actually sent them a note and said, hey, would you guys build a report so I could see history? And they actually use SQL Server. And the guy's like, we read SQL Server Central. I'll get this built for you. And a couple months later, he sent me an email and said, this is built. And so this is a report. And so after you do the rating, there's a little thing you can click on and say, what's my history? And so here's my history of how I feel about things. So these aren't my importance, but these are how I feel about things. And just a few months ago, I'd rated it. And I looked at the report. I happened to check a few of these numbers and I checked this well-being and I saw, wow, this has been different. Right? I had to think about it. So here's before the pandemic. So 2019 was actually a good year for me. I mean, you see this big dip here, but I don't want to imply this. It was more that I felt a little burned out. And so I had to change some things early in 2019 because I felt burned out. And then I started to feel better through the year. And even though I was traveling a lot more and busy, I was feeling better and better and better. And I thought I'd been coping pretty good through the pandemic, but I saw this. And this is up through at the beginning of this year, I think, because I do it more often than once a quarter. You see that my well-being has just been going down and down and down across the year. And so it made me stop and think about it. And it made me realize that there are some of these things that they affected me more than I expected and more than I realized. And certainly I think that now I see as I've talked to people about doing more events like this in SQL Saturdays, they are struggling. And so what I think is I've had a lot of good weeks and a lot of bad days, and I've really struggled to focus, and it's okay. Right? I've learned to be reasonable with myself, and I've had a lot of fun. I've had some struggles, but really I've been bored, and that's been a difficult thing for me. And so these tips have made a big difference, even when I'm not in a good mood or I'm not happy or, I'm frustrated. It's really helped, and animals helped a lot, and so here's me hanging out at the barn. Stitch, my little terror cat that kills everything he can get a hold of. He's just hanging out with me. And it's been a really mixed bag for me this year. Mostly good, but certainly tough times. So I think what I'd say to everybody out there is that you want to be reasonable with yourself. I think that's been a big part of this last year of, excuse me learning to be reasonable with myself and let myself go and accept some bad days and accept some days I won't get things done. But keep going, even through those bad times, because things will get better. And it's a good time for me now. A couple weeks ago it wasn't, but just doing something has been helpful to keep progressing, right? Even if I'm getting worse, right? I know it'll turn around at some point in time. Trying a lot of new things has helped me. Certainly some things surprised me. A lot of things didn't. And, that's fine. That's fine. Right. those of us that have had success, things go well, we know we try a lot of things and a lot of things just don't work, and that's fine. Talk to others. That's probably going to be a theme today, but honestly, I'm not a big talk as much as I do this. I'm not a big talker to individuals, certainly not about feelings, but I've learned to be better at that. And listening to people and talking to them has made a big difference. And then believe in the future. This is me in September of 2019 at Sydney. I'm going to go back. I'm going to take my wife because she didn't get to go. It's going to get better in the future. And so you have to hold on to that thought as well. So with that, if any of these tips helped you, there's things you think that have helped you that you want to give me tips, please reach out to me. I mean, I'm happy to talk to you and listen and help where I can. This was truly a joy for me. I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of the presentations today as well, and accepting that we all need help coping. We all need help with our mental fitness and our mental wellness. And so don't be afraid to reach out. It's not a sign of weakness or anything else. It's the reality of who we are. We're frail and fragile as humans, and we're a community of humans, and we need help. So thank you very much for listening. Kathy, Mala, thank you very much. And I'm honored that you allowed me to do this and that you asked me. They actually asked me to do this. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Steve. I feel just joyful after watching this presentation.
Thank you.
Oh, I think probably other people.
Me too, exactly, Kathy. I resonate with that. Yeah, I feel very good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
It was my pleasure. My pleasure. I was trying to be positive, because I know this is a hard time.